how they're going to react and respond to that environment. And the experiments that are being done on Space Station today, it's such a unique laboratory where the kinds of things that Steve's talking about, we can study physiological responses to bones, muscles, blood flow. Mental health is incredibly important part of this activity. And the experiments that we can do, for example, growing plants without soil, recycling water. If we have the ability to recycle water, maybe 98% of the water that the crew uses, that's less resources we need to bring along. And then sensors that can detect, for example, solar storms so that our crew can take shelter or protect themselves while they're on their journey. So again, the experiments that are being done are incredibly important to our planning, which, as I said, we're launching in less than a year. We need to be ready.
That's right. I mean, a ton of valuable research that we are gathering. Speaking then on, the research for Crew-11, Steve, I heard, there's a new experiment that's going to space station. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's called manual piloting, and what that is looking for is the ability for the crew to land a vehicle on the lunar surface. So we're looking at the sensory motor aspects, balance, cognition, some of the things that Lori was talking about, and putting them all together, and we have a simulator that actually moves in all dimensions and allows the crew to feel like they're actually landing a spacecraft. And we're doing that pre-flight. We have some devices on station where we can do in-flight measures as well as post-flight. So that will give us a great idea of what we need to do to prepare the crew to land on the lunar surface.
That's great. I mean, Lori, tell us a little bit more about those benefits of traveling then beyond low Earth orbit now.
Well, the reasons we're going to the moon and eventually the ability to establish a permanent presence on the surface of the moon, a base per se that we can go back and visit multiple times, is the science that we want to conduct on the surface of the moon will be incredible. We're going to a place that is totally different than where the Apollo astronauts landed, so totally unique environment, different lighting conditions, different geology of the rocks. We anticipate there is water ice beneath the soil in some places near the South Pole where we're going to land humans for the first time ever. So we will be able to do incredibly unique science, but we'll also be able to continue the human research aspects for longer duration stays on the surface of the moon where we're trying to live and work, and that will again feed forward to help us be better prepared for Mars.
Absolutely, a ton of exciting things coming up. Thank you both so much for joining us. Now we'll send it back to Daryl and Nick.
Thank you, Tony. Crew-11's time in orbit will teach us how to keep humans healthy in space for the long haul. Meanwhile, on the moon-facing side of NASA's work, Artemis II astronauts, including Commander Reed Wiseman, are training for a very different challenge, a 10-day mission around the moon. And before they launch, NASA and the Department of Defense are making sure they know how to get them home, even in an emergency. Here's Reed with a behind-the-scenes look.
Hi, I'm NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman, commander of Artemis II. I'm here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and as you can see, work is well underway for our next mission to the moon, both on land and off the coast. Back in June, teams with NASA and the Department of Defense used an area of open water off KSC to rehearse procedures for a possible rescue after an ascent abort from the SLS rocket. Instead of using astronauts, they used a set of test mannequins staged inside the Crew Module Test Article, a full-scale mock-up of the Orion spacecraft. You can see pararescuers jumped from a plane into the water with their specialized equipment, then approached the spacecraft, opened the capsule, and transported the mannequins to the helicopter safely for medical care. This was one of 2 emergency procedures they rehearsed should they need to rescue me, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy during an abort scenario. And back here on land, now that the upper stage integration is complete inside the vehicle assembly building, teams with NASA's Exploration Ground Systems have been running SLS integrated testing, where they powered up both the core stage and boosters for the first time in preparation for our 10-day journey around the moon. That's a look at your Artemis Moon Minute.
For more Artemis updates, scan the QR code on your screen right here or visit nasa.gov/Artemis-Roman numeral 2. Nick, I know you're excited for Artemis.
Absolutely.
One of your fellow astronauts you spend a lot of time with, Christina Cook, is going up.
Yeah. The astronaut corps is small, so everybody in the corps, and so I'm excited to see all 4 of them take their trip around the moon. It's exciting.
It's been a long time for NASA, more than 50 years. All right, now let's send it back to SpaceX in Hawthorne, California.
Thank you very much, Daryl and Nick, and it was impressive to hear that interview and that Moon Minute, and it's amazing to see how interwoven what's being done with these crewed missions to the International Space Station and how they impact moving forward and the Artemis campaign. So incredible to see about how those two crews and how those two missions work together. Now, as we get back to today's launch, we're now approaching 20 minutes away in the countdown for NASA's SpaceX Crew-11 mission to the International Space Station. So let's take a look at Falcon 9 that's on your screen now, and that is a two-stage rocket that is 29 feet tall and getting ready for liftoff, and again, approaching 20 minutes away. At launch time, it produces more than 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Sonia, that is impressive firepower.
Yeah, and rockets like Falcon 9 don't use all that thrust just to go straight up. Early in flight, Falcon 9 performs a gravity turn, which is a smooth pitch maneuver.
RP1 load complete.
Hearing good call-outs over the nets, which is a smooth pitch maneuver that tilts the rocket sideways to build up horizontal velocity. You may hear this call-out about 10 seconds into launch as the vehicle is pitching downrange. And once the first stage completes its portion of the mission, it shuts down and separates.
And a stage rocket like Falcon 9 sheds that booster to eliminate the weight and uncover the Merlin vacuum engine on stage 2. To reach orbit, the vehicle needs to go fast, hitting an orbital velocity of about 28,000 kilometers an hour. And that's just to keep it from falling back to Earth due to gravity. That's fast enough to lap the Earth in about 90 minutes or fly from New York to here in Hawthorne, California in under 10 minutes, which is about 7 times faster than the U.S. Air Force's SR-71 Blackbird.
After stage separation, today's booster will be landing at Landing Zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This particular booster will be returning to Earth for its 3rd time. The second stage takes over from there, powered by a single Merlin vacuum engine, also known as the MVAC. With its extended nozzle and optimized design, the MVAC drives maximum performance, producing 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space. On today's mission, we'll light that engine 4 times before deploying the final payload into orbit.
Now, so much of what makes Falcon 9 remarkable happens in flight.
SpaceX for countdown check-in brief.
Dragon's with you.
Okay, Xena, we have healthy Dragon, healthy Falcon 9, just like last time, so prop load is proceeding nominally. We do have one watch item that has popped up. There is a pop-up storm cell that is just to the north of the pad. Currently not violating any LCCs, but we are monitoring this particularly closely as it's moving offshore. We'll let you know if it starts trending towards blocking launch today, but again, not expecting that at this time.
Dragon copies all. We've got a healthy Dragon, healthy Falcon. We're proceeding towards launch. Only watch item is a storm cell that is north of the pad moving offshore. We'll continue monitoring, but otherwise looking great.
That's a good readback.
And great communications there from the team here at SpaceX on the ground in Hawthorne, monitoring. What we've been keeping an eye on throughout the broadcast here today is that weather popping up, but everything else looks strong and healthy. The Falcon 9, the capsule itself, and the crew, they're still ready to roll as we're now about 17 minutes away from the launch. Now, talking back to Falcon 9, and what remarkable happens is what happens in flight. It's the first stage, landing itself on land or on a drone ship in the middle of the ocean, the fairings that can parachute back, all ready for another flight to space. Every part of Falcon 9 is a part of a larger design that comes together to do one thing, and that's escape Earth's gravity.
And getting to space is the first step to building our multi-planetary future. At the top of Falcon 9 today, the crew is sitting inside Dragon Endeavour. Dragon has played a significant role in advancing our future in space by safely transporting crew to and from the International Space Station. There are currently 5 Dragon spacecraft supporting human spaceflight missions: Endeavour, Resilience, Endurance, Freedom, and our 5th and final Dragon, Grace, which just launched the Axiom 4 mission last month. Designed with safety as the highest priority, Dragon is capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth orbit.
The Dragon spacecraft has
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
16 Draco thrusters. As you heard that great call out there, as the fueling continuing to make its way into the rocket. And those 16 Draco thrusters can be used in space to help navigate the spacecraft to its destination, each providing 90 pounds of force. Now, that doesn't include the 8 Super Draco thrusters used for an abort, which are no longer active once the crew is in orbit.
To date, Dragon has been to orbit 53 times, including 48 trips to the International Space Station and 18 human spaceflight missions. And as we mentioned earlier, today's Dragon, Endeavour, has been pretty busy, having also flown NASA's Crew-2 mission, Axiom-1, and NASA's Crew-6 and Crew-8 missions. Overall, for the Dragon fleet, this will be Dragon's 49th visit to the space station and its 19th human spaceflight mission overall, and the 5th Dragon flight this year. Dragon is the first private spacecraft to take humans to the orbiting lab, having flown 300,000 pounds of cargo and more than 1,000 experiments to space, as well as 70 crew members representing 20 countries. Our versatile Dragon spacecraft can autonomously dock with the International Space Station when outfitted with a docking adapter, which is just how it's configured for today's flight. And when it's not going to the space station and it's in free flyer mode, the docking adapter can be swapped out for a cupola, as it was back during the Inspiration 4 mission. Another option we have is the Skywalker hardware, which supports extravehicular activities or spacewalks, as we did during the Polaris Dawn mission. And amazingly, there has been a Dragon in space for 1,358 consecutive days since Crew-3.
Now, with T-0 coming up in about 14 minutes or so, our teams are continuing to do a series of system checks to ensure Dragon and the Falcon 9 are ready, with fueling continuing to get underway. And again, we're monitoring that weather that the teams here at SpaceX are keeping an eye on and have been relaying up to the crew. So let's check in with Ronnie with the latest.
Thanks, Joseph. So as you've heard, we are still on track for an on-time launch today, and we're monitoring lots of different factors as we get closer to liftoff. Most importantly, both Dragon and Falcon 9, of course carrying our Crew-11 astronauts, continue to be healthy. You heard that we've wrapped up Stage 2 RP-1 loading, and that Stage 2 liquid oxygen loading also wrapped up on time at about 16.5 minutes to go. The launch escape system is also armed. That's, of course, the system designed to propel Dragon away from Falcon 9 in the unlikely event of an emergency. And the Eastern Range is monitoring keep-out zones along the flight ascent corridor and is tracking no issues for today's launch. Weather continues to be a watch item, so we'll keep an eye on that. But for now, we are go for the 6th mission of Dragon Endeavour. It is a fantastic milestone for Dragon, and here at SpaceX, we could not be more excited. So to add a little something extra to our celebration, I've got our Dragon plush hanging out with me here in front of Mission Control. Now, this guy is not the zero gravity indicator for today's mission, but do keep an eye out for that once Crew-11 reaches orbit. This is, though, a fun nod to all the successful flights that Dragon has made, and all of the crews that we have been so lucky to work with. I think this is a great way to celebrate today's flight milestone, and I really have appreciated joining you all. Thanks for joining me at the status desk for all of our coverage today. With that, go Dragon, go Crew-11, and I'm going to hand it back to Sandra for status update from Houston.
Thanks, Ronnie. That plush is cute. I'm going to have to get one for myself. Back here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, teams continue to work around the clock to monitor activities aboard the orbital outpost. Leading the team inside the room today is NASA Flight Director Scott Stover. The team in Mission Control and the team in Hawthorne, as well as the astronauts aboard the International Space Station, will track the autonomous docking of Dragon Endeavour when they enter into joint operations. This will happen when the spacecraft enters the approach ellipsoid, which is the invisible boundary stretching 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers that helps us monitor all arriving and departing spacecraft. It's essentially the neighborhood of the International Space Station. Once docked, crew members in both Dragon and aboard the International Space Station will perform a series of leak checks, and then will work to open the spacecraft's hatch for Crew-11 to float into the space station and begin their stay. We anticipate that the hatch will be opened about an hour and a half after docking occurs. When they enter the orbital outpost, crew will be greeted by the rest of the Expedition 73 crew and will come together for opening remarks. But for now, that's going to be all from us here in Mission Control for today, as the anticipation continues to build for launch in less than 20 minutes from now. So how's it looking on the Space Coast, Daryl?
Well, we've got a mix in the weather. There's some clouds that are building, but so far still looking good, okay for launch. It's a watch item at the moment, and so we're keeping our eyes to the skies. Also, this is a first for our broadcast team right here. An astronaut who once sat right here where Nick is sitting as a commentator is now minutes from flying to space. Zena Cardman was once in this very seat, the one that Nick Hague is sitting in now, less than a year ago. She was supporting Nick as he launched with Crew-9. She was originally set to command that mission, but when Crew-9 had the shift and had the change up of assignments, she had to step back to help get the team off the ground. And here's what she said, Nick, after watching you and your crew go into space.
Every crewed launch that I have ever watched has really brought me a lot of emotion. This one today was especially unique. I think it was hard not to watch that rocket lift off without thinking, that's my rocket and that's my crew. But I also know that I'm not the only person who can think that. Of course, we have Stephanie Wilson here today, but I mean, there are many, many people who made this mission happen, and there are people on orbit who will be taking this capsule home. And it makes me very proud to know that I am one of many people who can say, that's my crew, that's my rocket. Makes me really proud, makes me feel very connected to this mission that we all get to take part of. Go Crew-9.
An emotion-filled Zena Cardman in that moment, and she is going to give us some words any moment now.
Dragon SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
Your thoughts on hearing that after you launched?
SpaceX, Dragon, displays are configured for launch. It is our honor, our privilege, and our choice to take part in something much greater than any individual, but it's the individuals who make this endeavor great. To each of you at SpaceX and NASA, to our partners at JAXA and Roscosmos, to family, friends, and mentors, you fly with us today. Arigato gozaimashita. Spasibo большое. Thank you. With gratitude and focus, Crew-11 is ready.
And more words.
Crew-11, sentiment is the same on the ground from everyone staying here. We have enjoyed working with you in the preparation for the mission. Looking forward to doing the same in flight. Good luck. Enjoy the ride.
And more words from Zena Cardman. We just heard from her live.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I started the show. There isn't any place I'd rather be than here today. What Zena said is so true, you know, and it's this palpable feeling that, hey, that's my crew. Those are my friends. You know, hey, that's my commander. And just to be here and know that, you know, I've done my small part to help support them and along their way, and there'll be more support that happens in the future. And to be able to see behind the scenes everybody else that is contributing to that is, that's what makes this all so special, is it's not about the individual. Spaceflight has nothing to do with individuals. It's all about us working together.
100%. Well said, Nick. And kudos to both of you for showing an immense amount of class. You signed up to do this role almost immediately after getting into space, and we heard from you saying, I want to be there for Zena. Thank you for being here. And go Crew-11. And so with just 7 minutes to go, a little over 7 minutes, we want to send it back to Hawthorne for the final countdown.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Nick. And those were beautiful words from Zena Cardman. You can hear the emotions behind them and what they're looking forward to getting ready for launch. And they say Crew-11 is ready. As you mentioned, about 7 minutes and change to go until we have liftoff, and we're still awaiting the final propellant loading to complete, and then we'll get into engine chill, and more milestones will be along the way. It's going to be about a 9-minute ride to orbit, and then Dragon in the second stage will continue to coast for a few minutes after that once the first stage and second stage have performed. You'll be hearing some of those performance calls as we get into that final countdown, and then after liftoff. These are SpaceX flight controllers reporting on the trajectory, speed, booster, and performance, and the key milestones, but there are some other calls that you'll hear the crew make as well, especially after liftoff. The crew will report out a few number and letter combinations which mark different abort zones throughout the flight up the eastern seaboard. The first two, 1A and 1B, are abort modes available.
Has started.
And right on cue for the engine chill that has begun. And those first stage abort zones, again, 1A and 1B for that first stage. Next are 2A through E. Those will come into play once the second stage kicks in. They'll only hear that 2A call. And diverting a little bit from the other naming systems, we'll hear the call Shannon, which refers to Shannon, Ireland. This means that the crew could target off the coast of Ireland if they needed to abort late in that second stage burn. You'll hear these different calls throughout the flight uphill along the way, and the performance callouts from the guidance, navigation, and control officer and also the propulsion lead. So we're coming up on T-minus 6.5 minutes. We heard that the engine chill is started, and that means that that small trickle of fuel making its way into the engine to prime it
Stage
for
1 fuel load
launch.
complete.
So we already heard that stage 1 engine chill has already started, which is a key process that prepares the engines for flight. Right now, the prop in the tanks is isolated from the engines. Sorry. The prop in the tanks has already started trickling into the Merlin engine pumps as the engines are chilling for the start sequence. And we do this because the super chilled and densified liquid oxygen is really, really cold. And we use this process to bring the engine hardware down to a cooler temperature before flowing all of the LOX and propellant into it during flight. At liftoff, Falcon 9 is consuming 700 gallons of fuel per second. So engine chill helps us to prevent thermal shock and ensures nominal engine performance. Shortly, coming up, we should also hear the call out for stage 1 RP1 load completion.
As you mentioned, engine chill is now underway. We're getting ready for those next call-outs that'll be coming up here shortly, as we are now almost 5 minutes away from liftoff, and that's where they're going to configure for terminal count. And that will be a call for Dragon to configure to terminal count and transition into internal power.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
And at this point, the Dragon onboard computers
configured for terminal count.
Perfect, right on schedule, and those onboard computers now taking control of the spacecraft. You also heard the call out for pressurizing to give extra structural stability for the rocket as it makes its way uphill. So we're approaching now 4.5 minutes away, and then around that time, you'll hear, you mentioned it there, the strong back retract, and that'll allow provide access to Falcon 9's fueling lines and umbilicals for prop load and a different gases being loaded on board. But right now, everything's starting to wrap up, and Somya, it's exciting to get to this.
Strong back retract has started.
Exciting to get to this point of the countdown. As you heard it right there, the strong back retract is on its way.
So we have a great view on our screen of the clamp arms opening up just around stage 2 under Dragon in preparation for strong back retract. We have some really great views on our screen of that happening right now.
And you can see it just moving ever so slightly away from Falcon 9 and the Dragon spacecraft, those clamp arms opening. And again, those late stages, those fuel lines starting to wind down their fueling procedures as we're about to hit T-minus 3 minutes until launch. Second stage loading will wrap up shortly after the first, and you've probably noticed those white clouds venting from around the rocket. That isn't smoke.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
That's condensation, as stage 1 liquid oxygen loading has been completed. As liquid oxygen warms slightly inside the tanks, some of it boils off, and that gas is vented to manage pressure. When the vented oxygen hits that warm Florida humid air,
in terminal count and on internal power,
it instantly condenses into those clouds. As you just now heard, the Dragon now in prop load complete on into internal power. It's fully fueled. The rocket and Crew-11 are ready for liftoff. And this rocket now transitioning into internal power. The gas closeouts will also begin to purge all the feed lines and allow Falcon 9 to be isolated. And then they'll get vented overboard through the umbilicals and strong back retract.
So coming up in just under 20 seconds, we should hear the call out that LOX load will be completed on stage 2, which will mean that there will be 1 million pounds of propellant loaded onto Falcon 9 at that point. We're coming up on that call out in just a few seconds from now.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
Now that that's complete, we will vent down the TE, which will produce a white cloud off the side of the rocket, which is totally normal and expected.
Dragon is in auto idle.
Auto idle puts that rocket in a state the flight computers understand before it takes over. And that's making sure the transition to the final countdown is smooth and all the flight computers on board are in sync with each other and configured for launch. We're now 90 seconds away from
Ground
launch.
gas closeouts have started. Expect loud venting.
And there's the gas closeout that Soumya was just talking about. And now inside 80 seconds from the launch of NASA SpaceX's Crew-11.
On countdown net, hold, hold, hold. We are standing down for violation of weather rules.
I'll try to sequence is aborted.
So as you've heard over the nets, that we did just have a hold called at the T-minus 1 minute mark.
And that hold due to weather, that was something that we've been keeping an eye on. Our team here in SpaceX and Hawthorne, as well as in NASA, we're monitoring that throughout today's broadcast in preparation for launch. But unfortunately, standing down looks to be the case as the weather has created that violation. But we'll continue to monitor and await for the news officially from the teams on the ground as that weather violation looks to come into play for launch today.
Dragon SpaceX, bad luck on weather there. We just got clipped by a cumulus cloud right over the pad, so ended up scrubbing for weather. With that, you are go to proceed to 5.100 for launch scrub. We'll begin offloading the rocket.
Dragon copies all 5.100. Too bad, but we'll be ready next time.
And there you heard the call up to the crew that unfortunately the weather just not playing alongside with today's excitement of a launch for NASA SpaceX's Crew-11. But we have mentioned a couple times throughout the broadcast today that there are backup opportunities starting as early as tomorrow. 11:43 a.m. Eastern time is what the target time is for tomorrow's next attempt for launch for Crew-11. But it came right down to the wire, Soumya, with that T-minus 1 minute. But you heard on the loops there that it was just clipped, as they said, by a cumulus cloud to violate the weather rule. So unfortunately, today's launch attempt has been scrubbed due to weather.
You know, and there are 1,000 different ways that a launch can go wrong, and so we want to ensure the safety and reliability, even if it is a weather scrub. So we will stay with coverage of the crew as we follow them through the egress procedures and make their way back to crew quarters for now.
And you said the key word right there, and that is safety. The safety of the crew and everyone involved on this launch and opportunity, because that's what was talked about even in yesterday's press briefings with all the program managers and representatives of NASA, SpaceX, Roscosmos, and JAXA, is that we'll launch when we're ready and everything lines up the way it needs to be. And unfortunately, due to weather, not the case today. But to recap and look back at everything that Crew-11 has done, they walked right up to the T-minus 1 minute to launch mark as everybody was safe and sound. They went through their procedures earlier today, did soup-leaten checks, also did communications checks, and were able to go all the way to the pad, climb aboard the Dragon spacecraft, and get ready for launch today. But again, unfortunately, due to weather, it will not happen, and we will target that next launch attempt, which again is going to be tomorrow at 11:43 a.m. Eastern time. We will stay with coverage of the crew as we follow them through the egress procedures, getting out of the spacecraft and making their way back to crew quarters. And to do that, we're going to head back out onto the space coast of Florida and join Daryl Nail and team as today's launch attempt for NASA's SpaceX Crew-11 has been scrubbed due to weather. Daryl?
All right, thank you, Joseph and Soumya. We appreciate your coverage there. And now back here with NASA astronaut Nick Hague. We just returned from being outside. We were planning to watch the launch right there from a nice viewing spot here at the press site, the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And unfortunately, even as we walked out, Nick, we got a sense that this might not happen because clouds had been building in and around the area. We had dark clouds overhead of us. We got up on our area to watch the launch and heard a phase 1 lightning alert go off. And then my heart kind of sank a little bit because I thought that might be it.
Yep. Then you see the clock stop.
Yes.
And you know it's happened. So it's disappointing, but there's a reason we do it, and that's to keep everybody safe.
It's so critically important. As you look at this shot here, you can see that just right over top, you've got some darkened clouds in the area. This was a result of a sea breeze that when we started the day, the launch weather officer improved our forecast to 90% go, but there was a 10% concern that the sea breeze was going to develop earlier in the day than originally forecast. And that sea breeze, which is very, this is very common here in Florida in July, once that air starts moving over the ocean and onto land and meets the warm air, our blue skies went to cumulus clouds scattered across the spaceport. And we just had one get just inside the 10-mile radius.
Dragon SpaceX, for awareness, we're looking at approximately 50 minutes for the prop offload time. So it should be approximately 1700 UTC when we are able to proceed with 5.100 and rotate the seats.
Dragon copies. We're looking at about 50 minutes for prop offload. So 1700 ETC for the rest of 5.100 and seat rotation.
Good readback.
And so what is that, real quick, what does that mean, Nick? They are going to rotate the seats?
Yeah, so it's important to know that right now you're looking at a fully fueled rocket with an armed launch escape system. And so the crew is in the same posture that they were in the 45 minutes leading up to launch. They've got to be in that posture until they can offload all that propellant, which takes about the exact same amount of time to offload as it took to put on, as well as disarm that launch escape system. And so this is a very active rocket right now, and they, that launch escape system, if something went wrong, even now it's still protecting them.
It's a great note there. But this is very much a dynamic situation even now with a scrub called. The teams have to work through their procedures to safe the launch pad, the rocket, and the capsule from being just minutes from launch. And we were in that posture ready for launch, and now we have to undo that, right?
Yeah,
very carefully.
You got to back out of all of that, and then once the rocket is defueled, we've got all the fuel out of there. We can disarm the launch escape system. You still need the pad team to be able to come and get out there to get into the white room and help open up that side hatch and get the crew out. And so the scrub process is not a quick one.
Just to finish a thought that I had said, and I think this view on the left basically shows you what the issue is. That's rain on the right half of the screen there. That's a rain cloud with rain coming down. And on the left hand, we were dealing with sun poking through the clouds on our side. We could literally see the clouds kind of going over top of our heads, getting close to the pad. And the standoff area is 10-mile radius around the pad for these dark clouds and cumulus clouds. And that is a safety factor. We'll talk a little bit about that. That is because you don't want to send a rocket through a tall cloud like that could generate some energy from the rocket passing through it.
Yeah, just the same as if you're on a commercial airline flight, you don't necessarily want your pilot to take you through a severe thunderstorm. We don't want to do that with a rocket.
And so we are erring on the side of safety in this situation. But as Nick pointed out, the rocket that you are looking at is a fully fueled, ready to launch Falcon 9. As we now see, they are starting to allow some of the liquid oxygen to vent off as they begin detanking the rocket from its super chilled liquid oxygen and its RP1, which is the kerosene-based propellant.
Dragon SpaceX propellant offload update, estimating about 45 more minutes for propellant offload.
Dragon copies. Additional 4 or 5 minutes for prop offload.
Now, as you recall your procedures for the crew, getting out of the capsule and getting back into their vehicles and going back, take me through the timeline of the scrub procedure.
Yeah, it's a fairly straightforward procedure. You're running the launch procedure in reverse, essentially, and so they're strapped in. The seats are rotated up in a launch configuration. As soon as they detank, they're going to disarm the launch escape system. So you're looking at it's 45 minutes to get rid of the liquid oxygen and RP1. Once that's off, then they'll be able to disarm the launch escape system, rotate the seats down. At that point, the arm will come over and the ground team, the pad team, will be able to come up there. They'll open the side hatch and then help them get out of the capsule just like they helped them get into the capsule. So you're looking on the order of, an hour, a little bit longer.
And you want that rocket fully detanked?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got cryogenic propellants, oxidizers
moving, flowing,
and you want to make sure that that's all secure before you put people around it. That's the way the system is designed. It's different on other launch vehicles. Other launch vehicles, the Soyuz I launched on was fueled when we showed up to it. But while you're moving the fuel on and off, you minimize the number of people that are around.
That's exactly right. And the SLS rocket is similar in that it gets fully fueled and tanked, and then they bring the astronauts on board. SpaceX does it so they can do that tanking as the very last part of the mission timeline. And this also allows for a quick tanking, relatively speaking, for a rocket. And then allows you to detank it. But they're using super densified liquid oxygen as well. So you mentioned it. High energy systems are engaged here, and so we are now unwinding that as we proceed through the scrub procedure. If you're just joining us, we scrubbed this launch at T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds until liftoff. We had a healthy rocket, a healthy spacecraft, we had a clear range, and we just had weather in the area, a cumulus cloud that just clipped the radius nearby within the launch area, the 10-mile radius. It got into that standoff area, and that is what caused the scrub for the day, because that is a safety measure to keep the crew that you see on the right side of your screen safe from any potential hazards that could develop as a result of the weather. And this view gives you a clear look at exactly where the clouds ended up now just about 10 minutes after when we were supposed to lift off, right over top of us. They were certainly in the area. We heard the lightning warning go off, and so we knew when we were standing out there watching this launch that that was a bad sign. But it's interesting. I've seen it go both ways, right? Where we get a launch forecast that is 85% no-go, but you find a hole in the clouds that's just 10 miles in radius, and it's all around the launch pad, and you can launch.
Yep.
This is the opposite of that. We had 90% go with only a 10% chance, but this is Florida in July. These things can pop up literally just from, you know, the daily sea breeze collision that we have over land.
Yeah, weather is dynamic, and we throw a lot of technology at it, we throw a lot of science at it, and it still baffles us sometimes. So the mental shift that you make when this happens, you've got to attempt to not make the mental shift immediately, because it is it is a live launch escape system that you're in, but inevitably there's the, okay, so once we get out of here, what's the next step? When is our next opportunity going to be? They've already been looking at weather predictions for days out, so they understand what the impacts to the phasing and the mission profile might be, the potential for bad weather in the upcoming days, and so they're already starting to think about, okay, so what's the next opportunity, and then having to get into the psyche of, okay, let's do this again, and it is to the T, to the minute, do it again. So it's very much a Groundhog Day.
All of it, every single minute of the, roughly what do we 6-hour countdown where it begins for the astronauts.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the backup days. Joseph mentioned those before. He tossed over to us, but it's worth mentioning again. Our backup opportunities are tomorrow, Friday, with a T0 at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Our coverage would begin at 7:30 a.m. on NASA Plus. The weather for tomorrow is just a little bit better than it was today, but what does that tell you, right? We scrubbed today. It's 85% go. The concern is the same, because the same pattern could develop. It's cumulus clouds building up and around the pad, but I will add this. We have moved a little earlier in the day, so the later that sea breeze develops, the better opportunity we'll have for getting some clear weather. If we can't do it tomorrow, then our next opportunity would be Saturday, August 2nd. We'd still have an 85% go for Saturday. Same concern with cumulus clouds here at the launch pad. In both of those cases, well, let me talk about the backup number 2. The T0 for that day would be 11:21 a.m. for a launch, and that would be an instantaneous window. And you can see the pattern. We move about 22 minutes early every single day that we delay from this particular T0 today. And of course, that's orbital mechanics. We've got time. You want to explain that one?
Yeah, sure. So the international. Oh. Yeah, no, you've got to wait for the plane of the orbit of the station to cross overhead, and it just works out each day that it's a little bit earlier. Unfortunately, if it had come overhead a couple minutes earlier today, they would have been able to launch. The weather would have been clear.
I just mentioned the backup opportunities. One thing about both of these next launch opportunities, unfortunately, we're going to really have our eyes set on the ascent corridor, because now there is a trough that is approaching a line of storms coming across the eastern part of the U.S., and it is going to make its way out into the ocean, and so that could disturb the weather along the ascent corridor, which is an area where if Dragon were to suffer some kind of anomaly, something that wasn't expected and needed to come off the top of the rocket, it would splash down along the ascent corridor. There's concern about the sea states, right? How much it's sloshing around is going to be out there in the ocean. You need good conditions, a baseline of conditions, in order to pull astronauts out of a floating capsule with a helicopter and a boat.
Yeah, it just shows the complexity, the scale of the problem that you're dealing with. It's not a forecast at a particular point, you know, on the surface of the Earth, you know, at the launch pad. It's, if you imagine this 3D trajectory of the rocket's path going up to orbit, you've got to clear all of that for weather, but not just clouds and rain and severe thunderstorms, but like wind shear and drastic changes in the wind direction can create problems for the rocket. And then, in case, you know, there was a need to return them early or to abort, you also have to clear the weather on the surface along that path as well. You know, it's just an immense amount of respect for the teams, you know, both at SpaceX and also at the, you know, the Space Launch Delta 45 over on the Space Force side, the weather shop there, in trying to put their arms around all of this. Like I said, weather is really complex, and they do a fantastic job. But, you know, if we got a chance, 90% chance, you take it all the way to the end and see what Mother Nature gives you.
And I'm sure, as an astronaut, when it's your arse in the seat, you want that level of awareness, that level of scrutiny given to the weather throughout the trajectory, throughout the launch area and the launch period.
Oh yeah, you know, the immense respect for them, knowing that their job is watching my back. And
Dragon SpaceX propellant offload update, estimating 37 more minutes for propellant offload.
Dragon copies. 37 more minutes.
The clock ticks slowly.
Hope you got 37 minutes worth of stories, Nick.
But I, you know, like I was saying, it just takes so much to do that when you're sitting in that seat there, if you get the call for a scrub, there's no question. It's, you guys are the experts. This is the safest thing for us to do right now, and you're all in. You're not second guessing.
But you also have that moment, like when we were standing out there, you're like, oh.
There's the disappointment. There's the knowing you're going to have to go through this all again. The disappointment not just for the crews, but, you know, the team that's in quarantine with the crew.